What if the man you feared most was the only one left to keep you alive? The sun hung low over the desert horizon, turning the world into copper and blood. Clara Whitfield pressed her palm against the rough wooden frame of the window and stared at the land that had shaped every part of her short life. At 19, she knew the frontier had no mercy for dreamers, but she still dreamed anyway. Maybe that was her mistake. "Clara, get away from that window," her mother called from the kitchen. "Help me with supper." Their small homestead sat isolated on the edge of nowhere, 15 miles from the nearest settlement. 3 years ago, her father had looked at this patch of dust and rock and declared it good land. But the only thing they'd grown here was hardship. "Coming, Ma," Clara answered, but she lingered 1 second longer. The air felt strange, almost like the world was holding its breath. Inside the cabin, her younger brother Tom whittled by the fire. He was only 14, but already carried a man's weight in chores. Her father sat at the table cleaning the Spencer rifle that had cost them more than they could afford. Out here, a rifle decided whether a family lived through winter or didn't. Tom suddenly froze, knife mid-cut. He shifted toward a crack in the wall. "Riders comin'." Her father stood so fast his chair toppled. "How many?" Tom squinted, eyes sharp. "Can't tell. Too much dust." The rifle was in Samuel Whitfield's hands before Tom finished speaking. "Clara, get your mother and head to the root cellar." But Clara had already grabbed the shotgun from above the door. She'd learned to fire it before she could properly spell her name. "I'm staying." Her father shot her a look meant to stop her cold, but the thunder of hooves rolled across the land before he could argue. Clara stepped to the window, and her heart lurched. Apache riders. At least a dozen, faces painted, bows ready. "God help us," her mother whispered. The attack came fast. An arrow shattered the window where Clara had stood a second before. Her father fired twice before another arrow struck his shoulder. Tom tried to run toward the door, but her mother grabbed him, screaming for the cellar. The front door burst inward. Warriors poured inside like a storm. Clara fired the shotgun. The blast kicked her backward against the wall, ears ringing. Smoke filled the room. She saw her father fall. Saw her mother scream cut short. Saw Tom, brave and foolish, swinging his knife before a war club dropped him to the floor. Strong hands grabbed Clara's arms. The shotgun slipped from her fingers. She fought with teeth and nails, but they overpowered her easily. A cloth pressed over her face. The world tilted, sounds blurring into a distant roar. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was a warrior standing in the doorway. No paint, no triumph in his eyes, just something she couldn't name. When Clara woke, the world swayed beneath her. She was tied on a horse, slumped backward against someone's chest, her hands bound. Her family. Her home. Gone. Pain rose in her throat, but all that escaped was a dry gasp. "You wake," a voice said behind her. Deep, calm. She realized her captor rode behind her, arms braced to keep her from falling. Where are you taking me?" she croaked. He didn't answer. The world around her blurred into red rock and twisting juniper trees. Warriors rode in loose formation, silent except for murmurs in Apache. One laughed sharply, sending chills through her. The man behind her responded in a low voice, and the laughter stopped immediately. Hours later, they stopped near a cluster of rocks where water trickled from a spring. When they pulled her from the horse, Clara's legs buckled. Hands caught her before she hit the ground. She looked up and froze. It was him, the warrior from the cabin doorway. Younger than she'd thought, maybe 25. A scar ran from his eyebrow to his jaw, giving his face a sharp, unforgiving edge. He held out a water skin. "Drink." Clara wanted to refuse. She wanted to spit in his face. But her body betrayed her, and she drank until water dripped down her chin. "Why?" she demanded. "Why kill my family?" He looked at her without blinking. "Your people kill ours, we kill yours. This is the way of war." "That's not an answer." "It is the only answer." Another warrior approached, angry, speaking fast. Clara heard her father's name, or something that sounded like it. The scarred warrior stepped in front of her. Words grew sharp. Other men joined, voices rising. Finally, he said something that made them fall back. "What was that about?" Clara whispered. "They want you dead. Your father killed the brother of that man last winter." Fear crawled up her spine. "And you?" "I claimed you," he said simply. "You are my captive. You are under my protection, for now. I didn't ask for your protection." "No, but you have it." They reached the Apache camp by moonrise. It was nothing like the drawings she'd seen. Brush shelters, children peeking from behind skirts, dogs barking at her arrival. The scarred warrior led her to a shelter, slightly apart from the others. An old woman guarded the entrance. Her eyes burned with distrust. "This is Nantan's mother," the warrior said. "She will watch you." Nantan, his name. He cut the ropes around her wrists with one swipe of his knife. "Do not run! The desert will kill you faster than we will." Clara rubbed her wrists. "Why should I believe anything you say?" "I killed no one today," he replied quietly. "Your people did." He nodded. "As yours have killed ours. This war began long before us." He stepped back. "Your name?" Clara hesitated. What did it matter? Clara. He nodded once and disappeared into the darkness. Clara sank to the ground, hugging the thin blanket the old woman tossed at her. Through the opening of the shelter, she could see stars burning bright above the desert. Her family's stars, her only witnesses now. Tears came hot and silent. She pressed her face into the blanket so no one could hear her cry. When sleep finally came, it brought no peace, only the memory of a warrior's dark eyes watching her in the middle of death, and the terrifying thought that she might never see home again. At dawn, Clara woke to the sharp voice of Nantan's mother. The old woman stood over her, pointing to a basket and then toward a grove of mesquite trees. Clara didn't need to understand the language. She was being ordered to gather wood. Her muscles ached, her wrists still raw from the bindings, but she forced herself to stand. Around her, the Apache camp moved with practiced rhythm. Women scraped hides. Children carried water. Warriors checked bows and horses. Some stared at her with open hatred. One woman spat at her feet as she passed. Clara swallowed hard and walked toward the mesquite grove. The desert opened before her, in wide stretches of red earth and jagged stone. Heat rose already, though the sun had barely cleared the horizon. She bent for dry branches, her back protesting with every movement. This was her life now. A captive. A slave to the people who had taken everything from her. No, she would not stay that way. She would escape the first chance she got. Clara filled her basket halfway before a shadow passed over her. She straightened quickly. Nantan stood behind her, silent as smoke. "You think of running," he said. "I do not," she snapped, but her tone gave her away. He looked toward the west. "Your eyes look that way." "That doesn't mean." 5 miles west is only rock and rattlesnakes," he said. 10 miles more, a canyon where men fall to their death. 15 miles past that is Bitter Creek. Clara stiffened. "Then I can reach it." "The man at Bitter Creek Trading Post sells Apache scalps for gold," Nantan said calmly. "Men, women, children. You think he would help you? He would shoot you for your scalp and sell your boots." Clara went cold. "You lie," she whispered. "I gain nothing from lies." He tossed a stick into her basket. "Your people are not kind to women found alone, especially women who have lived among Apaches." The meaning cut deeper than any knife. Even if she escaped, even if she survived the desert, even if she reached white people, what then? Nantan stepped back. "Gather more wood, or my mother will beat you." He left her standing in the rising sun, clutching the basket with trembling hands. The red rocks blurred as she realized the truth. She was trapped between two worlds, belonging to neither, but she would survive. She had to. Days blurred into weeks. Clara learned the rhythm of Apache life. Rise before dawn. Gather wood. Haul water. Scrape hides until her hands throbbed. Kosada, Nantan's mother, watched her with sharp eyes, striking her knuckles when she moved too slow. At the creek where women worked, Clara stayed silent. They spoke in Apache. She understood almost none of it. She was an outsider, always watched, never welcomed. One afternoon, a young woman named Ayana approached her. She was one of the few who knew a little English. "You work like a child," Ayana said bluntly. "Soft hands, weak back." "I'm learning," Clara replied between clenched teeth. Ayana smirked. "Learn faster, or Cosada will trade you to the Comancheros." She mimed a man grabbing a woman roughly. "They pay good horses for white women." Clara's blood ran ice cold. "Nantan claimed me," Clara said. "Nantan is gone," Ayana replied. "War party left 3 days ago. If he dies, you belong to no one." Quote. Clara's hands shook as she scrubbed the hide. The Comancheros were worse than nightmares. She had heard stories. She did not dare ask if the rumors were true. That night, she lay awake listening to the camp. Dogs barking, babies crying, laughter drifting from the warriors' fire. Where was Nantan? Why should she care? She didn't know. But when voices rose at the camp's edge, she rushed outside. The war party had returned. Warriors dismounted, some wounded, some carrying what looked like human scalps. Clara's stomach turned. Then she saw him. Nantan. He was limping, favoring his left side. A long cut across his ribs bled through the cloth wrapped around him. But he was alive. Relief hit her so hard she almost sank to her knees. She hated herself for it. Cosada approached Clara at dawn, thrusting a bowl of herbs and cloth at her. She pointed toward Nantan's shelter and barked a command. "No," Clara whispered. The last thing she wanted was to tend the wounds of a man who had stolen her life. But Comancheros were worse. Much worse. Inside the wickiup, Nantan sat by the fire, trying to bind the gash himself. His jaw was clenched tight, but he didn't flinch when she entered. "My mother sent you," he said simply. Clara knelt unwillingly, grinding the herbs into paste. The wound was deep, angry, and unmistakably from a saber. "Soldiers?" she asked. "Yes." Clara cleaned the cut, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. As she worked, he spoke quietly. "They would not have rescued you," he said. "Soldiers would have used you, then left you to die." "You're lying." He shook his head. "My mother's sister lived it. 3 days she was kept. She crawled home more dead than alive." Clara's stomach twisted. She looked away. "Why do you tell me this?" she whispered. "So you know the truth. There is no rescue. No safe place for you among your own people now." She wrapped the bandage tighter than she needed to. Nantan didn't even flinch. "You think we are savages," he continued. "But your people give us blankets infected with sickness. They burn our crops. They pay gold for our children's hair. Tell me, Clara, who is savage?" She froze. "My family never did those things," she said shakily. "We only wanted to live in peace." Nantan looked at her with eyes dark as storm clouds. "On whose land?" The question punched the air from her chest. She had no answer. She finished the bandage in silence. Over the next days, something shifted, not just in the camp, but in Clara's heart. She saw Nantan teaching young boys to string bows with patient hands. She saw him share food with an old man whose fingers shook. She saw him carve a wooden horse for a girl who had lost her father. He was still her captor. But he was more than that. And that terrified her most of all. One evening, as she gathered firewood near the camp's edge, a warrior grabbed her arm. Kuruk, the one who stared at her too long. He dragged her toward the shadows. Clara fought, but he was stronger. His hand clamped over her mouth. Then he was ripped away, thrown hard into the dust. Nantan stood between them, eyes blazing. They argued in Apache. Warriors gathered, lines forming in the sand. Kuruk challenged him. The fight was bare-handed and quick. Nantan's movements were fluid and deadly. Kuruk fell, beaten. Clara didn't breathe until Nantan turned to her. "You are under my protection," he said. "Any who touch you, answer to me." "Why?" she whispered. "I'm your enemy." Nantan held her gaze. "Because I saw something in you," he said. "Strength, fire, life." Clara's heartbeat stumbled. "Do not make me regret claiming you." But the truth was already forming inside her, terrifying, impossible, undeniable. Something in her had already changed, something she did not yet have the courage to name. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was clear, and the next it cracked open with thunder that shook the canyon walls. Clara had been riding with the women, returning from the spring hunt. They carried strips of elk meat, hides, and herbs. She felt stronger these days, steadier in the saddle. Ayanna often teased her, saying she rode like someone born Apache. But the first flash of lightning made the horses scream and rear. The second bolt struck a dead tree so close Clara felt the heat of it. "Move!" Nantan shouted from ahead. "To the cave!" The entire band scrambled toward a dark opening in the cliffside, but as the rain poured in sheets, Clara's paint mare panicked. A crack of thunder made the horse rear violently. Clara lost her grip, felt the world tilt, and then she crashed backward into a stream that had turned into a fast-moving torrent. The water seized her instantly. "Nantan!" she gasped before the current pulled her under. Stones battered her sides, her lungs burned. She surfaced once, choking, only to be dragged deeper. She clawed at rocks, roots, anything, but her fingers slipped every time. Her body screamed for air, then arms around her, pulling, fighting the current, a voice shouting her name through the storm. She surfaced, coughing, water tearing from her mouth. Nantan held her against him with desperate strength as he fought toward the bank. Lightning illuminated his face. Blood ran from a gash on his temple, but his eyes were locked on hers. He dragged her from the water and collapsed, chest heaving. "Clara!" he gasped, turning her face toward him. "Breathe! Look at me! Breathe!" She coughed, shivering uncontrollably. Pain tore through her ribs with every breath. Ayanna and two other women reached them. "We must get inside. She is freezing." Nantan lifted Clara in his arms as if she weighed nothing. She didn't have the strength to protest. Inside the cave, they stripped Clara's soaked clothes and wrapped her in blankets. A fire crackled to life. She lay trembling against Nantan's chest, his arms tight around her. "Stay awake," he murmured into her hair. "I cannot lose you." Her eyelids felt heavy, but his voice kept pulling her back from the darkness. At some point, exhaustion overtook her. When she woke again, soft light filled the cave. Most of the band had returned to camp, but a small group remained. Ayanna, Kosada, two elders, and Nantan sitting behind Clara, supporting her against him. "You nearly drowned," he said. "Your ribs are bruised, but not broken." She tried to sit up, wincing. "I'm fine." Quote, "You are not." His voice was sharp with fear. "You could have died. I could have lost you." His hand trembled as he brushed wet hair from her cheek. Clara had never seen him look like that. So unguarded, so raw. "I cannot pretend anymore," he said. "Not after today. When I saw you in that river, I felt my heart stop. Nantan, I love you." The words were plain, stripped bare of anything but truth. "I have loved you from the moment I saw you fight in your cabin doorway. I tried to deny it, but when death nearly took you, I knew. Clara, I love you." Her breath broke. "I know," she whispered. "I've known for a long time, and I love you too." Their lips met, at first trembling, then deep and fierce. His hands held her face, as if afraid she would disappear. She felt the months of tension, longing, loneliness, and fear melt into that kiss. For the first time since losing her family, Clara felt whole. By sunset, they returned to camp. Nantan carried her despite her protests. The moment they arrived, whispers spread like wildfire. Clara saw joy on some faces and anger on others. Kuruk stood with his supporters, eyes dark with resentment. But Nantan kept her close, his arm firm around her waist. "You're making a statement," Clara murmured. "Yes, let them see, let them know." That night, he stood beside her openly at the fire, their closeness undeniable. It was a declaration as clear as any vow, and it brought the challenge they both expected. The next morning, Kuruk stepped forward, voice hard. "You are weak." The white woman has blinded you. I challenge you for leadership." The camp fell silent. Clara grabbed Nantan's arm. "You don't have to do this." He shook his head. "I must." The Apache way allowed challenges to leadership by combat, not to the death, but to submission. The one who yielded lost his right to lead. Clara watched with her heart in her throat as Nantan and Kuruk circled each other. Kuruk was larger, stronger. But Nantan fought with calm precision. His movements were fluid and deadly. Kuruk charged. Nantan sidestepped, using the man's momentum to throw him into the dirt. They grappled, fists flying. Blood spattered the ground. Two warriors, one future. Clara clutched Ayana's hand until her knuckles went white. Finally, Nantan pinned Kuruk with a knife to his throat. "Yield." Kuruk struggled, then spat. "I yield." The crowd erupted, some cheering, some grumbling, but the decision was final. Nantan remained chief. That night, Clara tended his bruises inside the privacy of their shelter. He caught her hands, pulling her close. "Be my wife," he said. Clara froze. "In Apache way. In your way, if we ever find a priest." His forehead rested against hers. "Be mine as I am yours." Tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "I choose you." They sealed their promise with a kiss that felt like sunrise after a long winter. Their wedding came days later. A simple ceremony with both Apache blessings and the Christian promises Clara remembered from her childhood. Kosada tied a white deerskin cord around their wrists. Clara wore a soft doeskin dress decorated with shells and turquoise. Nantan's vows mixed English and Apache, his voice steady and full of love. That night, under a blanket of stars, they became husband and wife completely, body and soul. Clara had never felt such love, such belonging, but the world beyond their camp had not forgotten them. Months later, soldiers arrived with hard faces and harder orders. Colonel Morrison demanded Clara be returned to white society, said she had been kidnapped, said her marriage meant nothing. Clara stood beside Nantan, her hand in his, her voice steady as stone. "I did not come here as a captive, I stay by choice. I am Nantan's wife." But the soldiers wanted a war, and Clara saw the fear in the elders' eyes, the same fear she felt. That night, holding her husband's hand, she made a decision that would either save them all or destroy her. At dawn, she rode straight into the soldier camp alone, to negotiate, to fight with the only weapons she had left. Her truth, her courage, and her love for the man who had claimed her fiercely yet healed her gently. What happened next changed everything, forever.